Okay, welcome back to Gary's Economics. Today we are going to predict the UK budget 2.5 months in advance. Okay, so I was going to do a video this week about how to convince your friends we need wealth taxes. But I'm gonna push that back to next week because something has happened in the last 1 week, 2 weeks that I think is sufficiently important that we need to talk about it now so that we can get ahead of it in advance of the UK budget. All right, so for those of you who don't know, the UK budget comes once a year. It's normally about the end of October. So it's not gonna happen for another 2.5, 3 months. When it happens, there's always a stupid media show. And we always have an argument here where I say, I'm not covering the budget because it's a waste of time. Nothing important happens. But this year, I think something very, very interesting is going to happen in the UK budget. And I think it's important we get ahead of it. If you are watching not from the UK, this is going to be very, very relevant for you as well, because what is happening in the UK budget is a good way of understanding a massive thing that is happening, not just in the UK, but in every country in the Western world. And what is happening here will happen in your country very, very soon. Okay, so as you know, one of the big goals of Gary's Economics summer-autumn season 2025 is I'm trying to infiltrate elite UK institutions because I think we're going to need some level of support from elite institutions in order to get the wealth taxes that we need. So in the last month really, but especially the last 2 weeks, I've been cycling all around Westminster, meeting lots and lots of different people, trying to see whether we can get support for wealth taxes, trying to understand what we need. And in doing so, I have learned a little bit about what is going to happen in the UK budget. Now, usually, when I was a trader, I always found it interesting how the UK budgets were often really not particularly market relevant. They didn't really move the markets. And what that means, in my opinion, is basically nothing very important happens and policy very rarely changes in the budget. But we, I think, are going to see some really interesting things in the budget this year. And the big top line picture is that there are going to be significant increases on taxation of the middle class. And when I say the middle class, I mean that in the British sense, which confusingly is kind of the top 20%, but not the top 1%. Now, this is very interesting because the UK Labour government came into power on a very strong promise that we are not going to raise any taxes. And yet now, just 1 year into that government, it looks like we are probably going to get a significant increase in taxes, which will probably be extremely politically disastrous for this already very unpopular government. So why is this government that is already very unpopular and promised not to raise taxes going to raise taxes on the middle class? Okay, so what we are going to do here is we're going to do basically a description of what it means to run your wealth down. You overspend your income such that your wealth deteriorates, which is basically what the governments have been doing in the UK, the US, really all across the Western world, especially since the 80s. And I want you to understand how that provides the context of how you reach a point where the government basically has no choice but to sort of go for certain groups in society. And we're going to use that through the example of an individual person, which is maybe not the perfect example, but I think it does describe what's happening, and it's important context for why the government is doing what it's doing now. Okay, so let's say, like the government in the post-war period, you start off with a lot of wealth. So let's say £1 million. If you have £1 million of wealth, you're going to get some income from that wealth. So you normally make about 5%. So if you have £1 million of wealth, then you're going to make something like £50,000 a year in your wealth income, your passive income from your wealth. Government also has like its income from taxation, which the equivalent for a person is a work income. Let's make that 50k as well to keep things nice and simple. So you've got good income, 50k a year, wealth income 50k, work income 50k, but your policy is you're going to run this wealth down. You're going to spend more than your income. So instead of spending 100k, which is your income, you're going to spend 200k. Bit more there, right? So you're spending more. And then obviously the consequence of spending more than your income is that your wealth goes down. So next year you have only 900k wealth, less than $1 million. And obviously because your wealth is less now, your passive income from wealth is now less. So instead of making 50k, you're going to make only 45k. Your work income is the same. I'm going to drop these pound signs to make it a bit clearer. You should be a bit worried because your income's less now, but you're intentionally planning to run this wealth down. So let's run it down a bit more, and you're going to keep spending 200k. What happens then is, of course, that your wealth falls again. And because your income is less now, your wealth falls not just by 100K, but 105K. So now you go down to 795K. And your wealth income falls even further. This now falls another 5K plus a little bit more. So this drops to just 39.75K. This stays the same. Your spending stays the same because you keep running it down. And next year this falls, see this fall was 105. This fall was just 100. This fall is 105. And now you're going to fall just over 110. It's like 110 point something. And this is going to drop down to 684 point something. And what you should see is that the wealth is not only falling over time, but the speed of the wealth fall is falling. So your wealth is falling in an accelerated way, which is kind of worrying. You can keep running this down and eventually you'll hit zero. Once your wealth hits zero, which we kind of hit, we were in this kind of period after 2008, before the COVID crisis. Now your wealth income is zero. Your work income is 50. But it's hard now, right? Because you're used to spending 200 a year. And especially we hit this point in COVID where even though the government wealth had fallen to effectively zero, we had to keep spending because of COVID. We're used to spending 200 a year. So we actually kept spending. And in fact, during COVID, we started to spend even more. But we started to overspend even with no wealth left, and we started to run into debt. Which means after COVID, you're in a kind of situation where your wealth goes down as far as, say, minus 500 in this example. Then your wealth income can become negative. Like not only do you have no wealth, but you have to pay interest on your debt to the rich. So now this is minus 25. Your work income is still 50, but you want to spend 200, but eventually the people who are lending you this money, which is rich people, they start seeing, well, if this keeps going down, we're not getting any real wealth anymore. All we're getting is debt interest. Eventually, if we keep lending these guys money, they're not going to be able to pay it back. Eventually, you hit this floor where the rich refuse to keep lending you this money, and suddenly you cannot do this anymore. You cannot overspend your income because you have no more wealth to sell. You're not allowed to borrow any more money. So you suddenly have to bring this into balance, which means now the max you can spend is 50 minus 25, which is 25. So you have to suddenly aggressively drop your spending. Now, obviously, this is a stylized example to exaggerate what is happening. But what I want to point out here is that this naivety to the aggressive falls in government wealth leads to a situation where obviously, inevitably, eventually you will run out of wealth and you will have to aggressively reduce your spending. And this is true not just of governments, it's also true of what's happened to the working class. It's obvious to be reminded of what happened during, for example, the sale of the council houses. If you sell your assets and those assets are not accumulated by the public, but are accumulated by the rich, you will eventually hit a point where you have to aggressively reduce your spending. And when that happens, what are you going to do? You have a number of options, and we will talk about those options now. All right, so now let's get like a fresh sheet. All right, so now we want to talk about what the government can do. And for a long time, the government was basically funding its spending by borrowing more or selling assets. In either cases, you're running your wealth down. Now, the UK government has hit the point where this is not an option, and other governments in the Western world will hit this point very soon. That leaves you with basically 4 things you can do. Number 1, and the thing which we constantly campaign for, is tax the rich. Don't tax the workers, tax the super rich. These are the guys who have the assets now. These are the guys who have the government wealth now. These are the guys who have the working class wealth now and are getting the middle class wealth. This is what I constantly campaign for. You should tax the rich. But our government, most Western governments, are extremely reluctant to do it. So what other options do you have? Number 2 is you tax the poor. Now, for a long time after World War II, ordinary people, the working class people, poorer people, did have some wealth, but that's gone now. There's no way you can tax these guys more. There's nothing to take. You cannot tax an empty bucket. No wealth here, that's not possible. Number 3 is you can try to slash the welfare state. Now, obviously, here in the UK, we had 14 years of what is called austerity, conservative austerity. If you're watching from the US, you're moving into your slash the welfare state period now. It doesn't feel great for the poor, but there's a degree to which you can do it. We've already done it loads in the UK. The UK government, the Labour government now tried to do that earlier this year. They wanted to slash spending on disabled people, and their own politicians basically blocked it, which means now Labour does not have this option. Which means you are left with only one possible option other than tax the rich, which is to tax the middle class. And when I say the middle class, I mean that in the UK sense, which is basically higher earning workers or non-super rich asset owners. And if you watch our video, The Squeeze Out, you will see that this is basically what happens. If you allow these wealthy people to rapidly grow their share of the pie, first the poor loses their assets, then the government loses their assets and the welfare state goes, and then you are left finally with this choice that our UK government has now, your government will have very soon, which is you only have two options. Do you tax the rich or do you tax the middle class? And I'm here campaigning for tax the rich, but the truth is most governments at the moment seem to feel like their only option is to tax the middle class. So that is what you will get. That is what we will get in October, and that's what you will get in your country very soon. This is a very important moment for you and for the country, okay? Billionaire-owned media will try to portray this taxing of the middle class, of richer people, as a battle between the middle class and the poor. They do not want you to realize that the reason the middle class are being taxed is because the government is aggressively, stubbornly, and stupidly unwilling to tax the rich. A battle is going to continue here, which has been going on already for a long time, which is that the poor and the working class are being bankrupted. The welfare state is being shut down. In the absence of taxation of the rich, the middle class will inevitably be eaten next. You cannot have an aggressively expanding wealth of the very rich in economies that are not growing quickly without gradually displacing every single other section of society, including the middle class. If you do not get systems in place such that you can tax the very rich whilst their wealth is aggressively growing, every single group of society, including the middle class, will be destroyed. But what the rich want to do is to separate out the middle class so that the middle class form an alliance with the rich and think that if we simply support and stand by the rich for long enough, we will be protected whilst all of the pain will be felt by the poor. That is not going to happen. If the middle class do not form an alliance with the poor, they will be eaten by the rich, simply basically by the virtue of maths and compound interest. The poor have been f***ed for a long time. The government is being destroyed next. The government has nothing left now. There is only two options available now. Either you tax the rich or you allow the rich to eat the middle class. I'm here speaking now to the middle class of Britain, to the middle class of countries across the Western world. What choice do you want? Whose side are you going to be on? Are you going to support the rich who will outcompete you and your kids for the things that you need, for housing, for financial security? Or are you going to stand with the working classes of your countries to protect the wealth that your grandparents and your great-grandparents fought so hard to get for the ordinary people of the UK and the country in which you live? Listen, you're going to hear a lot about this in October. I'm telling you right here, right now. October is going to be another big step in a class warfare that has been going on for a long time. And the people who are winning are the very, very rich. Their wealth share is aggressively expanding. That is what is making it impossible for ordinary people like you and for your kids and your grandkids to own property. They are going to try to portray this as a battle between the middle class and the working classes, between the middle class and the poor. If you accept that battle, then you will ally with the exact people who are going to take away the wealth that you need. Go back and watch the video of The Squeeze Out, because everything that I said would happen in The Squeeze Out is what is about to happen in October. Listen, there's only a certain amount of resources in this country. There's only a certain amount of resources in this world. If you allow this super rich to grow and grow their resources, you will lose your share. What I want to make clear is, I think that what I do on this channel is very often mischaracterized, largely by billionaires and by billionaire-owned media or billionaire-owned bot farms in Russia. When I say tax the rich, when I say tax wealth, not work, I am doing that not just to protect working people, but also to protect the middle class. They constantly say what Gary wants is to tax high-earning working people, despite the fact that I constantly, aggressively, very clearly say, I am trying to tax the very rich, the wealth hoarders, the asset hoarders, to protect working people, including high-earning working people. If you are a high-earning working person, if you are a working person who has a very powerful job, you have influence in something like government, politics, media, think tanks, academia, I want you to look very hard at the situation you're in right now. What are you going to do? Are you going to stand by me, the person who says tax wealth, not work? Or are you going to stand by the billionaire media that is going to raise your taxes and take your wealth? All right, so that's it. That's the budget, 2.5 months in advance. It is going to be another step forward in a class warfare, which is rapidly progressing. Listen, there's going to be a battle here. The rich are winning. The rich are winning really, really, really aggressively. For a long time, the middle class have been relatively protected. That's going to change now. The middle class are going to start to get hit because you're the only guys left that have any wealth in a situation where the rich need to take more and more and more and more and more. What are you going to do? What are the middle class going to do? Are they going to stand with the poor, with the working class, who have already been impoverished, to protect themselves from the rich, who are taking everybody's assets? Or are they going to allow themselves to be divided, in which case the rich will take everything, including the houses your kids need? Listen, we're going to fight against it. We're going to try to protect the ordinary working people from the super rich. Protect your wealth, protect your kids, protect your families, protect your future. Watch the videos, understand the videos, send them around, send them to your friends, your colleagues, your family, your mum. Support the channel, support the Patreon. Tax wealth, not work.